Hey guys, good morning, good evening, everyone. Welcome to SUG Columbus January 2023 session. Today we are going to introduce Content Hub 1. This is, I think, so first ever in Sitecore user group. Before going to the session, would like to thanks everyone, SUG Columbus members. We have been active since quite a long time, maybe I would say 1.5 years. It's been 1.5 years. And in that 1.5 years, we have been one of the most active Sitecore user group in the world. We have arranged minimum one session every month. In 1.5 years, we had 20 sessions. We have hosted 26 speakers, and just 1.5 years, we have reached 225 members. So thank you everyone for joining our group and helping us out growing the Sitecore community. I will hand over to Sebastian for the session. Enjoy.
Great, thanks. Thank you. And yeah, thanks for having me. I think it's the third time I joined this user group, and it's always great to be here. I mean, luckily I don't have to fly over just for this user group. I would if I could, no question on that, but this way is much easier for sure. Okay, then let's start. Welcome to Crawl, Walk, Run with Content Hub 1. My name is Sebastian, as Maulik introduced me. I'm a developer advocate at Sitecore and responsible for the content-related products within Sitecore. So everything around XM Cloud, XM and XP, but also Content Hub 1 or Content Hub DAM, Content Hub Operations, all of those products. Yeah, my goal today is that you have an understanding on what Content Hub is, Content Hub 1 is, and you know how it can help you and your clients in their daily business. We will cover content modeling, the available APIs, the command line interface, and how to develop using Content Hub 1. So a few of those topics has been released already as videos on Discover Sitecore, the YouTube channel, but not all of them. And let's say I give an overview about all of them, and then you have a little bit more details in these videos. And a little bit more hands-on. However, we will do demos here in this presentation, not just slides, so that you can actually see and also feel Content Hub 1. So as you know, Sitecore's product portfolio has massively grown and in the past 2 years. And Sitecore has added a new range of composable SaaS products dealing with content, commerce, and all experience-related topics. So the great thing is that all of these products can be picked based on the requirements your customers need. And they are easy to integrate with each other, but work also great with the products of other vendors. So since December 2022, Content Hub 1 is publicly available and within the Content Cloud, basically. So we have these 3 clouds, right? Engagement Cloud, Commerce Cloud, and Content Cloud, and Content Hub 1 is the most recent product that has been released so far. So yeah, let's talk about this great new product and what it is about. So in today's world, consumers interact with a lot of brands in multiple channels, and the number of channels has massively increased over the past years. So in order to be present and consistent in each of these channels, marketers need to be empowered to maintain content basically centrally, right? So marketers need tools that are agile, flexible, and modular to actually do that task, right? So Content Hub 1 is exactly offering that functionality. So Content Hub 1 is a headless content management system that combines an easy-to-use interface for marketers, but also with APIs to deliver and manage content at scale for developers at the end, right? So all of this in a software as a service offer, like Sitecore is doing it right now with most of their offers. So for marketers, Content Hub 1 is offering flexible content modeling, effortless content authoring, and reusable omnichannel content. So we will see the application in a minute, and we will see much more what marketers can do within the platform and how they will work with it. At the same time, developers benefit from working independently from marketers. So you can let your business users focus on creating impactful content while developers build engaging experiences. As Content Hub One is offering APIs, it becomes language and framework agnostic. So developers can leverage a rich set of SDKs and APIs supporting popular front-end frameworks, or also unpopular ones. You're completely free to choose, right? And you have a fast and globally distributed performance. So you can globally access your published content through a GraphQL API endpoint. Okay, so enough of slides for the first 5 minutes. Let's actually see what Content Hub One looks like. Let me just see. So let me just go back to the home page. So as I need to turn to the other monitor, so so that's why you see me from the side now. So as all of our SaaS offerings, or I think most of them, you can access Content Hub One separately, but you can also go via the portal. So we have the Sitecore Cloud portal, which is the entry point for any SaaS-related journey at Sitecore for marketers, but also developers. Now I passed this step already and jumped into Content Hub One. I'm authenticated with my user. And this is what I will start with, right? So this is the Content Hub One homepage. You can access documentation right here for business users, but also for developers. And yeah, you have a couple of stuff directly mentioned here, but I would say the most important stuff is right here at your hand in the main navigation. So what you can do is, for sure, it's a content management system, so you can manage content. And let's just do that. Let's go to the content page here. And what you can see is a list of content based on certain content types. Now we will talk about content types in a minute. So what I will do right now is just adding a new content type. Oh, let me find some content types first. So you can search for content types, content. So if I search for Apple, for example, there should be a content named Apple, which is of the type products. If we have a look on the Apple content item, we can see that there are several fields that have been filled in. So beside the name field on the top left corner here, we have the product name, but we also have a product description. We can choose an amount of products, maybe the availability or what size the package is of, like how many apples are in one package. And then we have a product image here. We have a price, and then we can have related products where we can choose from a list of other products or even other things that we want to connect with this content item. So pretty much a headless content management system, I would say, as at least I would expect it. And so we have fields, and let's just create a new content item by saying add content. And based on the content types I have created so far, I can create new ones, and let's just create another product. So we give it a name. Let's say we have apples, so now we have pears. We have, let's say, description. Maybe there are also 4 in a package, and we want to choose an image. So by choosing from an image field, we land in the media area, and we can see all the images that have been uploaded so far. So there is a pair image already. Let's just choose this one. And then we have a price, and maybe it's also $2.45. And we could relate a product, for example, the apple. Let's do that and save it. So, well, we've forgotten one thing that I usually tend to forget, which is the name of the item itself. So I just named that pair already as well and save it again. And let me also publish it for now. We will talk about publishing later, but if you have worked with XP or XM or XM Cloud or any other product in the content management area, it's I think it's always the same thing that you would expect from publishing, but we will talk about that. Yeah, what next? Let's have a look on content types as well, or let's have a look on media first. So under media, we find a list of already uploaded media items. We can see if they have been published or not. So if they haven't been published, they are in draft state or changed state. So if the item has been updated, and if I take a look on the pair item, I can see that an image has been uploaded along with the pairs, and there is also a description for the image. And that's the only fields we actually have, beside the name field, and then also an ID, which we have with any of the content and media items. So we can also upload new media items for sure. It's always the same process and always following the same idea. We can upload assets and then choose it basically from here. Let's just skip that for now. Yeah, let's have a look at content types. So let's take a look on the products we've just seen. So the apple and the pear was based on the content type products. And I assume that a lot of you have worked with XP or XM. So content types relate mostly to whatever we know as templates from the XP and XM world. So we describe the fields, we describe what field types these fields are of, and we can extend that. Yeah, so if I just click on one of the existing ones, so I've defined a field called product name as a field type short text, right? So that will be at the end just a single line text field for the author to maintain content. Or I have a long text, which is the product description is of type long text, which means I will have a multi-line text field. Now, if I add a new field, you can see what field types are currently available. So I have the text, which splits into short text and long text. I have a rich text, which provides, let's say, some simple formatting options like underline, bold, something like that. We have a number field, which only allows number values for sure. We have a Boolean, which allows true or false values. We have a datetime, and we have reference, which references other media items, other content items. And then we have media field, which relates to any media items. So that's basically what we have offered. Last but not least, we have the settings area. So if you are an administrator for that environment, you have the ability to see and create API keys and also see your OAuth client credentials. So let's have a look on the API keys first. So what we can do here is basically we can create API keys, and the moment you create it, it's the only one you actually see the API key. So afterwards, you will no longer see it. So you better have it stored somewhere safely, because this is something that you will use to connect with any of the APIs later on, right? So we have created already a couple of API keys here just for testing purposes. We can remove them, but we cannot really change them. So it's creation or deletion, I would say. If we take a look on the OAuth client, you see they are not visible, and I will not make them visible right now because this is something very crucial to your environment, which you also need in order to interact with the content management API, for example, and authenticate. We will see that also later when we talk about the content management API. So everything you need, you have, I would say, right at your hand here. Great. Yeah, just showing around. It's not big, it's very simple, but that also has advantages, I would say. So coming back to the slide deck. So we've seen content types now already. Yeah.
Sebastian, there are some questions coming in the chat, but whenever you feel like you want to take questions, you can take those.
It would be great if we can handle them at the end. Otherwise, we might end up on discussing on a lot of topics and then miss something of the presentation, if that's fine for you.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Absolutely.
Yeah, good to clarify that. Right. So we've talked about content types, and very connected to that is content modeling. So for sure, every business has its own unique requirements, and therefore the way how marketers interact with content will be different for each requirement or for each business that you serve. So content one allows to model content that fits exactly the marketer's needs. So just to define what content modeling is the process to define the structure of the content to help organize and of course also to manage it, right? So the content model basically defines the structure of the content, and we've talked about that already. So what fields are shown to the author, what field types are used, are field types mandatory or not, and basically the content model guides the author what content is required and in what format it is required. And so when modeling content, you have to have your requirements in mind, and content have different purposes, and also the approaches you choose to model content can be different. Let's see a few examples. So you can model, for example, considering a certain data type. So let's say you need a recipe, and the recipe consists of a name and the ingredients and the time you need to prepare it, a description, how to prepare it, and then maybe an image of the result of the recipe. And your recipe might even look different, but let's just take that for now as an example. So each field we would define then as using a certain field type. And we can say, for example, the name of the recipe is always mandatory, but maybe the other fields are not, right? So this way we can define a certain content type based on the data type that we require. Another example would be that we model content and have a component in mind, right? So some UI piece that we want for our screens. And let's say we need a hero banner component that requires a background image and then a title and description for the overlay. So also that can be a content model, again, depending on the use case that you have. So if you want to have a modular website and have your content, your building blocks or components in mind, then that can be a way to go. And last but not least, the third requirement would or could be a model. So your content author can manage a website. So you as developers want the author to be able to adjust the header, footer, and main content area without involving further developers. So with all that, we can have, for example, a header and a content model or a content type header, which involves a logo and then menu items, which are content types of its own, and they're just referenced. And this way, a content author could build up the navigation or exchange the logo image or something like that, right? And then you have your main part of the page, where you have maybe your hero banner, and then maybe a title for the recipes and the short text, and then teasering already some of the most important or most recent recipes, which can be referenced, or you can automate that maybe with a certain query. But let's say we have them just referenced here. And then at the bottom, for sure, the footer that consists of a text and a logo and a link. Could be also linked lists or something like that that you build up. Well, yeah, basically whatever you require here. So with all that, always keep in mind how flexible you really want your marketers, or how they need to be, right? The marketers and authors, because flexibility always tends to add also complexity. But even with a simple content management system like Content Hub One, you can make it very flexible and still very easy to have content maintained if you choose the right content model. Okay, so let's create a content model, or let's create a content type. So let's go into content types and let's create, for example, an event, right? So this is our event content type. As you can see, the ID is directly suggested. You can change it, but that's the only time when you can change it. So keep in mind, whenever you give it a name, think about it all. Think also about the ID, because that's the identifier later on that you will use to reference that piece of content or that content type. You can give a description, which you can also do later on. Let's hit next, and now we can add our first fields. So we can say we have an event name, for example, as a text, and we make it a short text. You see, we have a toggle here to make it long text or short text, and we can say it's required. Again, the idea of the field is also like instantly created along with that, and now is the only time that you could change it. So let's add another field, which is maybe a description. Description. Make it a long text for now. And an event, of course, has a date. Make it a date. And what else do we need? Maybe let's add a media field because we don't have it. So we want an event image. And we want maybe we want to reference speakers, for example. We don't have a speaker type yet, but we would need a reference field to be able to do that. And maybe we make this not the event description, but we make it the event teaser text, and then have a chance to have a rich text field for the actual event description. Right, so that looks good. I think you can change the order if you like, right? So you can move things up and down. Yeah, let's save it for now. Oh, failed to fetch. That's not good. I think that's connected to my approach on moving things up and down. I think it doesn't like it in the first place. Let me just reload it. There we go. So let's create an event. I just make it a bit shorter right now. We don't need all the fields. I think you've seen what we've done so far, but let's have an event name as a short text. Okay, that's saved already successfully. Let's have an event description as a rich text. Let's have the related events. Oh, sorry, that was the speakers. Speakers, save it. So it looks still good. And what else did we have? Maybe the image. So that's the event image and save. There we go. So now as we have a content type events, we can go actually into content. And we don't have a content item yet for sure because it's just created, but we could actually search for events. And let's see what we got. No results found. That's what we expected. So let's create an event and say that's numbers. We can have description, great user group happening right now. I don't have speakers created yet. So if I go in here, I have like a lot of content items that I can choose from, but I don't have speakers. So that's why I can't choose that. And I probably don't have a proper image, but I'm using that donuts theme here. So let's also use it for now here. So we have that content. I've forgotten again to give it a name. So that's again my work numbers. And save it. And I will publish it as well. So we can see that the publishing is in process or progress. And yeah, it will be done in a couple of seconds. If I go back and if I see my latest worked on item on the very top, and I can see already the status is published. So that's already done. Great. Let's go further. So what you've seen right now is more of what a marketer will see and use beside of the settings section. And I believe also some of the content modeling is rather done by a developer than a marketer, but it's part of the tools that a marketer has available. But what do you need to know as a developer then, or as an architect? So let's start with the architecture and the APIs offered by Content Hub One. So Content Hub One consists of a data storage as well as an application to manage the content. And the application we have already seen, the storage we haven't seen, but it's a SaaS product, so more of a black box, I would say. And well, we also don't have to care about the storage. It just does it for us. The content is delivered using the delivery APIs. So we have a media delivery API, what you see in the yellow box, and we have a content delivery API. The content delivery API provides a GraphQL Edge endpoint, and the media delivery API is basically a CDN, I would say. Additionally, there is the preview API. So it's also a GraphQL endpoint, but it's directly pointing to the content repository. So you don't need to publish to see it. It does what it's named after, right? So you use it if you want to preview your content. To manage your content, Content Hub One offers a content management API as well as a media upload API. So that's what you find at the bottom below the content, right, in the black boxes. So this can be used to export and import data from other sources, or also to automate content creation, right? So whenever you have any fields that can be computed of other fields, then you would rather do that, for example, with an Azure function and have a time-based trigger, or sorry, you have a time-based Azure function that checks the content every once in a while and then works on it. So last but not least, Content Hub One offers an SDK and a command line interface. So the CLI can be used to mainly serialize and deserialize content and media items, as well as content types. So yeah, let's have a closer look on each of those. Okay. So on the delivery and preview API, let's have a look on those first. As mentioned, the delivery API as well as the preview API both offer a GraphQL endpoint to query basically for data or search for the data. So the major difference here is that the delivery API, as the name said, delivers content from Edge, so in a scaled manner. So this is what you would typically use if you have an application for public usage. Those should or have to connect against the scaled delivery API. Now, the preview API, as already mentioned, is directly approaching the Content Hub One authoring environment. So it shows also content that hasn't been published yet. And as the name says, basically, it's only for previewing purpose. So it's definitely not made to have any public available app connect against it, because it simply doesn't scale, right? You will run into some issues with that. And also you probably don't want unpublished content being publicly available. That's probably the second thing. So let's have a look on the content delivery API. I have that here. So Sitecore provides a GraphQL Edge, sorry, a GraphQL IDE, and you might have seen that for XM Cloud already. It's basically the same tool, just connecting against a different environment. Down here in the HTTP headers, you can put your API key. I will not show that because otherwise you have my API key and can work with my environment. I want to avoid that. However, what you can do here is basically I can query for, let's say for events, and I should be able to even see that. The events are not yet here. So let's stick then with the recipes or products. So we have all products, and all products is usually a list of products. So we have, well, let's start from scratch. We always have this IntelliSense here, right? So if I start typing, or even if I don't start typing and just do a control space, it tells me what I can do. So let's say I want the results of that, and I can directly see what fields are offered. So there's always an ID field. Let's do another control space. So we have the name. So these two fields are always connected to the item. You will always find them. However, we also created a product name, right? So that was our field that we custom created. Or we had a product price, for example, or a product description. So let's run that query and see what we get. That's not what I was expecting. Oh, there seems to be too many brackets. Let's see. So this is one opening, right? That's just one. Too many. So here we go. I just see currently one product. That can be because maybe the other product is not yet published, right? We are connected against the delivery API, which only shows currently published products. So that's the pair, the product we just created and also directly published. Right. So that's all we can do here. Basically, we can have a look on our delivery layer and query for products. We can, or query for items. We can use that to predefine queries that we're later on using in our application. We will also see that. Right. We could also connect to the preview API and do the exact same thing. We would have another URL here, but that's all the difference, I would say. I would say not much more to show here right now. Let's go further. So let me have a look. Short sip. So another great developer tool is the command line interface, or the CLI. It provides the capabilities to store content items in your source code repository and deploy those back into your Content Hub 1 tenant using serialization. So if you've worked with XM Cloud, if you've worked with XM or XP, serialization is probably not a new thing to you. Content Hub 1 is also capable of doing that and having everything you need in your source code repository and that you need to be shipped along with your source code repository. You can have that, right? So you can also have everything, but probably you don't want all the content to be serialized. You can also create content packages. You can create and manage your API keys, and you can also publish and unpublish your content using the CLI. So it's basically a tool, yeah, for serialization, but also for automation if you need that, along with your deployment pipeline or anything like that. So let's have a look on this one as well. And this time I'm going into Visual Studio Code. Let me just clear my screen here. So I have here my little terminal, and I'm currently in a solution for Content Hub 1. We will have a look into that in the last chapter. But what is important right now is I've created myself a custom folder called serialization. And everything you see right here has been created by the Content Hub CLI. So I can delete everything. And once I do my first serialization, it will come back. So let's just do that, for example, for header. So let me just delete this header folder, move to recycle bin. And now let's serialize the header directly from my Content Hub 1 tenant. Now, what we need to do is, let me just check. So the CLI commands always start with ch1 CLI, as you can see here, CLI, and we always find a help underneath. So we have three major commands. We have the tenant, the delivery, and the serialization. So the tenant is everything about managing connection, as it says here on the right side, right? So we need obviously to connect to our Content Hub 1 tenant, and you have the ability to let's do that. Look, so we can add a new tenant, so we can manage multiple tenants and have them in our list, and we can switch also between those to have only one active tenant that we would connect to, right? So whatever command we're running, we want to run it against a certain Content Hub 1 environment. And therefore we need to register those. They call it tenants, by the way. We need to register those here, right? So this is how we do it. we would do an add. We can also list them. Again, if I list them, you would see a couple of things that you shouldn't see right now. So that's why I don't run that command. So once we have added a tenant to our list, if there's only one, that's always the active one. But otherwise, we need to run the select command to change which one is the actual active one. Now, what I wanted to do is I wanted to serialize something. So let's say, and let's see what we can do with the serialization. So we can initialize a working directory. So we can say where the serialization should be done on our local environment. If we don't set that, it will be always done in the local folder that we have right here. So as I'm currently in the root of my solution, I will rather switch into the serialization folder before I actually execute one of the serialization commands. We can run a diff to see how our local compares against the one that we have in our Content Hub 1 tenant. We can run a validation that checks if the files that actually have been serialized, or if you changed something in the serialized files, if they have been, if there's something wrong with it, right? So there can be some things that doesn't work later on the API. So the validate command checks that before hitting the API. We can pull, which means we pull everything from the tenant, and that's what we will do in a minute. And we can, of course, push it back to our Content Hub 1 instance. We can also create a package from our serialized or pulled content items and content types and install that package later on to another instance, for example. We could also use the pull and push command, but we can also use a package. Okay, so let's pull something. Wait, so we do a pull. Let's see what we need to do here. So we want to serialize or pull a content item. I've just deleted the header. So let's pull content item and with a parameter C, we will tell the CLI that we want to pull items of content type header, right? So let's do that. And it's looking for content items, and it has found one with that ID, and we can also see that it has created a folder under content items with the name header, and then in there I find a YAML file, which actually is the serialized version of my content item. So we have the ID and the name, which is the item related fields, and then we have all the other fields under fields, right? We have the menu items field, which references menu items. We have a logo field, which references a media item. And we have a hero image, again, which references another media item. So that's basically how it works. We can also push everything back if we make changes here, for example. So if we say, well, the name is no longer homepage header, but it's something else, then we make a change here, save it, and then push it back with the serialize commands. So definitely a good tool, right? So let's go back, having a look on the time. Right. So we also have the content management and media upload API. And starting with the content management API, that allows to manage content from outside of Content Hub 1. So it can be useful when doing content automations, using, for example, Azure Functions, or when exporting and importing content, right? So that's basically the main aim of it. So with the content management API, you can basically perform any kind of CRUD operations. So you can create, read, update, or delete any kind of content types, content items, media items, but also media assets. You can work with users, at least you can list them. I think there you can only perform a read. And you can create and manage the API keys also from here. So let's have a quick look on this one as well. Starting maybe here. So on the one hand, Content Hub 1 offers a Swagger API. So here you have all the different endpoints listed to manage your content types, content items, media items, API keys, and users. As you can see, there are only GET commands for the users. It's all based on Open API standards. However, I will just quickly use Postman to just go through what you can do here. For sure, we're not going through all API calls, doesn't make sense, but I think you get the point. Now, how I structured my Postman here is I have an environment which contains my my client ID and my client secret, which I will not show right now. And on the other hand, I have my collection here, which have, for example, some variables that defined, which are all the URLs to the environments. So that's something publicly available. For sure, you need to authenticate. That's what you use your client ID and client secret for. And for authorization later on, I'm using the authorization of my Content Hub 1 instance. So what I need to do first is to actually authorize, and the authorize command is using my client ID and client secret. So you can see that here, right? So within the body, I send my client ID and client secret, and if I run that command or that API request, I get a bearer token. Now this bearer token I need in order to authenticate with all my other requests. So I've just used a fresh bearer token, and what I can do now, for example, I can look for content types. So what I need to do here is in the head, sorry, was it here? No, in the parameters. It's a little bit too zoomed in. I can search for products. So let's do that. Let's see what products we get. So we can see, what can we see? Oh yeah, so we are searching for the content type products. So now we see how the fields are actually defined, right? So we have a field name, sorry, we have a field with the ID product name, and the name of the field is also product name. It's defined as a short text and so on. So I'm querying now for content types of type products, and this content type is defined in a certain way. So this is what we get from the API. We can also create content types from here if we need to. We can change or update content types, add new fields, for example, something like that. The same we can do with content, right? So if we go for the content items, we can query based on, well, we can even search for certain terms like Apple. I've just deactivated those, but if I search for a content type products, let me just do that. You see there are currently 2 products available. We have a pear, and there should be an apple as well. There's not because we set the page size and page number to 1. So if we set it to 2, then probably the apple appears as well. Because we're going against the content API, which is directly connected to the content environment, right? It's not the delivery layer. Yeah, and as you can see, so we will also publish this collection of API calls that you can play around with that and have directly working stuff. This will be also updated in the Swagger API. However, this is already available right here, right? Great. Looking a bit on the time, I have to speed up. What did we miss? Right, so the media upload API, just to fulfill the picture, yeah, allows basically to upload media and also create the required media items so that you can access that, right? So you always have your file, your asset, and then you have an item that manages that asset, right? So which connects that asset. So that's what you do with the media upload API. It's also documented very well, but just to mention the workflow here in a nutshell, what you have to do is you first have to create an upload link. So there is a request for that. And once you have the upload link, you can use that to request and actually upload a certain asset. Then you have to complete the upload. So let's say that's a finalization request. And then you have to create the media item connecting your uploaded asset with an actual media item, so it all appears in Content Hub 1. So 4 steps in order to make that happen. But yeah, as I said, this is probably something to automate export, import functionalities, or have any kind of automations. Right. Okay. So now we know the tooling, but what can we do next? It's basically development, right? So that's what we want to do. And for sure, we want to implement applications to display the content maintained in Content Hub 1. But we can use any kind of app development framework. Important to say, my example will be on Next.js. Doesn't mean that you can't use anything different. You can use Vue, Angular, .NET Core, React, you name it, basically. Whatever can query a GraphQL endpoint is fine to build upon Content Hub 1. So you only need to connect to the GraphQL endpoint and query for the content you need and basically build awesome applications. Right. To support you creating applications even faster, we are currently in process of creating starter kits for several front-end frameworks. That should give you an easier start. However, it's not complicated, but there are some things that, well, when I went through it, I thought of like, let's create a starter kit so nobody else have to fall into that into that problem. So that guides you also in kind of how you develop with Content Hub 1, and it shows simple implementation examples, and it can be used as a starting point for your custom solution. You just wipe out everything you don't need, which is just a few files, and then you're ready to go. Sadly, the starter kits are not yet published. There is already a public GitHub repo, as you can see here in the screenshot, but I'm pretty confident that we will manage to have the first starter kits out this week. So yeah, watch out for this. I will probably tweet about it. So yeah, watch out for those. Let's have a quick look on those, and I think that should be nearly the last thing I'm talking about for today. So we've seen that solution already. So let's just have that. So let's start with a page, maybe. We've seen, no, let's start differently. Sorry for jumping back and forth. So I have here a local running application, and that's also the one that you see in Visual Studio Code, right? So I have a page here which has a navigation. It has a home navigation and then a link to the Content Hub 1 documentation. I have here a title and some text, and then I have teasered a few recipes. So currently it is a recipe for donuts, pizza, and soft ice. Not sure if that's something. Anyway, so if I click on read more, if I didn't break it in the last 2 hours, no, I didn't. Then I land on a page which basically gives me all I need to know in order to create a recipe. I know how much time it takes, what ingredients I need, and then a proper description. Well, this is not a proper description, however. Right, so that's the application that you will see, just that you have an idea. So under pages, I have my index TSX file, which gets created when I create a certain my first Next.js application. So I'm querying for a home page. So currently I'm querying for all home pages, but there's only one. Maybe I should change that. And let's just go through that. So this is a function that just runs a query against the Edge endpoint. In this case, it's the delivery API. And if we take a look on the query, we have this is basically the query that you've seen, which I pre-created in the Edge IDE or a GraphQL IDE, right? So we can query for all homepage content items, and I've referenced here one homepage content item, which basically looks like that. It has again an ID and name field, but then custom, it has the hero banner. It has a header, which is a referenced field that consists of other content items, and the header content item consists then of, again, ID and name, which is always there, but then a custom one field, which is logo, which references then a media item, and I've also have a media query for that, and it again references menu items and so on. So that's basically the query. So if I go back to the page and we scroll down. So what we do is we take the results and pass it into our output, or in here we just say we want the first output. So just one home page, and this home page we use further on just to either pass it into Next.js components or to directly display it here within that page. So for example, we have the hero banner, which again could be a list of media items. So that's why we have to take it as an array and then take the file URL, which we pass into the image source, for example. Or we pass the header into the header component. And if we take a look into the header component, then out of the header, we are using what do we use? We use the logo, which again is an image, could be a list of images. So that's why we just take the first one. And then in there, we have another component that takes my menu items and so on. So that's basically what we do. Now, the thing why starter kits could make sense is, on the one hand, handling the media items. So we've pre-built something for that. But on the other hand, also to handle rich text fields. Now, rich text is returned in JSON, and you have to transfer or pass the JSON so that you have HTML at the end, right? And there is a library that does that for us, but it's a bit cumbersome to install all of that, and that's why we have the starter kit right now. So let me just go into the package JSON so that you understand what we've done prior to that. So the rich text field is based on a tip-tab editor. And in order to make that work, you need to actually install an NPM package for each of the formattings that you have available. So we have a block quote, we have bold, we have bullet list, and all of that. You can see it's a long list, and it takes, well, it's cumbersome to install it. You might forget something, which might lead to an error later on. And also you need to have the prose mirror package in order to transfer your JSON into HTML later on based on that. So yeah, we will publish it this week. That's what I hope for. It's nearly done. We have a few questions that we have to wipe out before we can do that, but then you can play around with that. Great. So to summarize what I just showed in this presentation, Content Hub 1 has a very fast time to value due to its simplicity. The API makes the content available for all kinds of applications, no matter what framework is your preferred one. The nature of SaaS helps you to get started very fast. And in addition, we provide great documentation. And that's for real. I've reviewed every page of it, and it has been adjusted already, and it's really helpful and great, and all the mistakes has been taken out. So it's really good documentation. There are already 3 tutorials out there. A 4th is coming, and a fifth one as well. And yeah, and the starter kits are also coming. And the offered APIs make integrations very easy, I would say. So as Content Hub 1 is a very new product, not all features that we would have liked to see right from the beginning are yet there. However, as shown, you can model and author your content, you can publish to a scaled edge delivery layer, you can manage media items, search and filter your content in your authoring environment, and you can preview content using the Preview API. You have support using the SDK, which I didn't show because I haven't explored it yet, and the CLI. And we're currently working on adding field validations. For example, that references can be limited to a certain content type. Like if we want to have reference products, then we don't even want to search for products, right? Which we would have to do now. On the list is as well bulk operations, and then a new field type as a select field type, and localization. So that's currently on the list, hopefully coming soon. And by having said that, I know I'm a bit over time. Sorry for that, but I hope it was valuable time spent for you, and I'm open for questions.
Hey, thanks, Sebastian. That was awesome. So we have some questions on the chat. We'll go through that. Nimia, you have questions. You have a bunch of questions. So if you like to ask, go ahead. And we have another question from Ketan, so we want to give him a few minutes also.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Sebastian. So the first question is like, let's say if you want to add a simple YouTube or a Vimeo link in a field, like which field type should be used?
Currently, I would just use a single line text field. I don't think that there's a better one right now. So
Okay.
either you just use the ID of the YouTube video, however you want to use that later on in your code or in your application, or you have the complete link to the video with youtube.com/whatever, right?
Okay, all right. And the second question is, let's say if your client wants to use the Kannada one, so apart from the production instance, do they get any sort of a sandbox environment as well?
You can definitely have more than one content of one environment. However, you would also pay more, right? So I'm not sure how I'm not into sales, I have to say, right? So I don't know how the packaging is right now, and if there are packages, let's say enterprise packages, where you have included a non-productive and a productive environment. But that's definitely possible to have. But I'm the wrong one to ask about pricing and packaging. Sorry for that.
Sure, no problem. And when you added the short text field, so I was seeing some option called display setting. So is that still not available for the user? Or?
Sorry, you say about the short text?
Yeah, so when you added a field in the content type, and I saw an option called display setting. Is it for some sort of a front-end implementation or anything like that?
Yeah, let's quickly have a look. I'm not quite sure. Event. So either here.
Yeah, the second option was.
So okay, so you have different so it's like a tab, right? So you have data settings where you can say it's required and what kind of data type it is, which we've chosen when creating it. But there are also display settings, which currently it's just one field for the help text, but there could be more. Not sure what the product has on its agenda, but that's basically a tab. So we can switch between two different things. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
All right, Ketan. I'm not sure if Ketan is still with us. His question was, can we add conditional rules and validations to fields? For example, an event speaker is mandatory, or event image can only be added if date is specified, something like that.
There is, as you can see here, we have the required validation, so we can make a field required. There, before go live, we even had a validation on referenced content types, so that we can say, for example, in this one, we want to have speakers, right? So we only want to have a list of speakers when we go into that field in the content section. Currently, that validation has been taken out because there were bugs with it, but it will come back without the bugs then. So that's what I mentioned is being on the list. Not sure what other field validations are planned, but that's definitely like the one is making it required, which is already there. So what you see here is all production. So that's what you get. And the other one was there and before public announcement of Content 1, but they took it out last minute because of the existing bugs, and they will bring it back. Yeah, that's the whole story I know, which I can confirm.
Right. So we are top of the hour, like, but if you want to stay a little bit more, Sebastian, can you stay a few minutes more?
Sure, I'm here. Yeah.
Yeah. So Navjot has a bunch of questions. So Navjot, you want to go?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Himadri. So I think the first one quickly, there is how are we positioning Content Hub 1 versus XM Cloud? Are there materials out there that will help us sort of position that, or how do we summarize that, Sebastian?
I need to check about the material, to be honest. I know that well, let me just I take this question later on. I need to check what we have actually as material available. But what I can tell you right now is, so these two are well, what they share is their content management systems, right? But if you know XM or XP or XM Cloud, and what you've seen right now, there's a huge difference in both. So starting with Content Hub 1, I think its major strength is the simplicity. So it's really like there's not much training effort on this one, but you also can't do much. It's more of like how you model your content in order to enable your authors and marketers to have a good experience within the Content Hub 1. However, it doesn't provide any kind of additional tooling, right? So it's a perfect match when we talk omnichannel and simplicity. So whenever we have these in mind, Content Hub 1 is a great fit, I would say. Again, I have to say I'm not a salesperson or I'm not into pricing, but what I know is also due to its simplicity, also the requirements and therefore the price is much lower than what you would have for an XM Cloud instance that offers by itself already basic personalization, basic A/B testing, all that stuff, all that integration points. It's much more sophisticated XM Cloud or also XM and XP than Content Hub 1 is. So Content Hub 1 is really a pure headless content management system, how you would expect it. And it's really like, if you hear the word omnichannel, then that's definitely something to think about Content Hub 1. Not to say that XM Cloud can't do omnichannel, that's not the case, but it's a real simplicity and omnichannel player. I think that's the point here. Yeah.
Okay. The other one was in terms of customization of attributes of fields like rich text, we generally customize in XP. Can we do something similar? And on the same lines, you had a list of speakers that are coming from within the CMS, but is there any way we can customize and integrate that from a third party? Like list of products coming from a product catalog or something like that.
So if you want to have custom field types as you know them maybe from XP or XM, then I have to say no. If you want to have, like, if you want to reference other fields, you surely can do that, right? So you can still model your content in the way that you have. I forgot the example that you just mentioned, but mine was speakers, or that could be also venues, or like anything that connects to events that you want to reuse for other events as well, and not type in every time the same, right? Or if you have a blog, you probably want to reference an author and not type in the same author details each time. So for sure, you can use that for any kind of connection between content items and media items, and that's already very powerful. But you're limited to the field types that are currently offered. So you can reference things or content items, you can reference media items. You have short text, long text, rich text. You have Boolean, I think, datetime. Not sure if there was another one. And the selection one is on the list. So that's the most useful things that we came up with for global availability. And yeah, that's how it is, right?
Okay. And then does inheritance work? Like if I'm creating a content type, can I just inherit one which has certain fields and create a new one with additional fields within Content Hub 1, or do I have to create one from scratch with all the,
So inheritance, I think that question is also coming from like how we have it in XP or XM, right? So
yeah.
You do not enhance the field set like we do it in XM or XP, but again, we can reference, and that's how it is modeled in here. So you can have content maintained once, or the fields of content defined once, and use them along with your other content type, but they don't show up in line. For example, if I open the home page, let's go back here to the content and search for my home page. There we go. So what you will see is that my header is referenced. I don't see the fields exposed here of my header, right? And the same goes for my recipes. They are referenced. However, I have to do it once. So it's not quite, I think, what you're asking for if we can compare it against XP and XM. but it can do similar things. It's just, yeah, it's a different thinking, I would say.
I think it's more of like, inheritance versus composition. You can
Yeah.
do everything using composition.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Navjot.
Yeah, the last one was, do we have versioning? And if we do have versioning, then does CLI allow us to version the content accordingly? So when you're creating content types and content, can we sort of manage versions and then also use CLI to sort of keep a backup of those versions and also use the same for migrating content?
So there are no versions, again, in the terms of XP or XM, but what we have is we can independently manage content which is not published and what is published. So we have always one version that's or it's not always in draft state, that's wrong. But if I start changing this one, for example, so currently I can see it's published, but if I say, I add here Sub Columbus, then you can see I can save that and it's now being in status changed. So there is a published version outside in the public world, and I have a different version right here. That's all we have in terms of versioning. It's more a workflow with two versions, I would say, but it's not as sophisticated as having like, I store all my versions because I want to go back because I want to bring back my Christmas version or my whatever, right? So that's not what we have here, no.
So when we do serialize, what do we get? We get the published part of whatever we have, or?
No. So the serialization goes against the content management API and pulls everything that's available there. So publish is just meaning that whatever's published is going through the delivery API.
Yep.
Right. So the content delivery API, but the content management or the content management API or the CLI goes against the content environment, basically. So it pulls everything, no matter if it's published or not.
Okay, so if let's say today I serialize my content, and then I make a change in tomorrow morning. Now, if I restore that serialized content, my data from today morning, or rather tomorrow morning, will be lost in that case, right?
You will. So yeah, if you do changes in the content of one tenant and you override it by something that's coming from your serialization, there it's overwritten. You're right. But whatever has been published stays published until you republish again, right? So that's your public facing content is not changed by serialization. It's only changed by publishing.
Okay, and as you showed, we can still find the difference between what we have and what is serialized, right? So we can find a differentiation between that and then.
Yes, what we have in the content environment and what we have in our local environment as serialized items. So that differentiation we can get, yeah, before we actually do the push, yeah.
Okay, and last one, Sebastian, there is nothing for visualization of how this data would look, right, in any particular desktop or mobile device. So just a preview of sorts. Is there anything in plan to sort of have that, or or do we use the APIs to just?
I would say no, it's not in plan, and that's the nature of headless content management. I would say the nature of headless content management is that you have content that is agnostic of however it's going to be displayed. Now you saw that I also modeled content for a particular website purpose, and therefore you would use the preview API. So you can connect one application that you have, for example, against the preview API and see how the new content looks with your application, which you haven't made public, for example. So that would be a way of making it previewable, but it's not the purpose of having something like Experience Editor or Pages to directly work on content. Because again, the purpose of the headless content management system, especially Content Hub 1, is to stay omni-channel. So your content will go on a mobile app the same way as it goes on a website, but maybe with different designs. So Content Hub 1 doesn't care basically how the front end looks like. It's a repository of content.
Okay, yeah. And can we publish data based on a range of dates? Like I don't want to publish today, I want to publish during some set dates? Is that possible? Planning or scheduling a publish, or is just publish when I click publish?
Yeah, I mean, it's not within Content Hub 1 itself, but you can definitely have, again, for example, an Azure function that checks for certain publishing dates. I mean, you can't restrict things to be published. You would have to do that outside, right? You can't say, never publish my homepage, for example. There are no publishing restrictions here. However, you can use the CLI as well as the content API to publish content triggered from somewhere else, and you can have that logic outside of Content Hub 1. I'm not sure if the product team is considering that. I can ask for, but I haven't heard of that. Yeah.
All right,
All right, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, we are 11 minutes over. So Sebastian, just last question on the serialization try. Related to that, I'm just wondering what will be the workflow for the developer, because Content Hub 1 is SaaS product, and you showed that you can serialize and you have that in the solution, the items and things. But here in this case, usually developers do not need to share the items because they don't have any local environment, right? So what will be who will be responsible for serialization and all those things? Because if some developer gets something from another developer and he updates it, and the other developer will be surprised that his items are overwritten, right? So what do you think about that?
Okay, so I think there are two questions, right? The one is the workflow for developers, and the other one is what serialization is useful at the end if we have a SaaS product that we all get connect against to. Let's maybe cover the first one. So I would see the developer workflow as following. You definitely need a Content Hub 1 instance, and you have to clarify if there is only the productive one, which is a general SaaS use case, I would say, or if you also have an additional one that is not productive, right? Like a pre-production or QA instance or dev instance or something like that, where you as developers connect against to, but if you change something, it doesn't hurt the productive environment. So that's the first thing to clarify. And then what I would expect is that you go for one of the starter kits, get this one, connect it with the available Content Hub 1 instance, or like mock the content if you have to, but ideally you have an environment that you can connect to. And then build out your next Next.js app. So that's roughly how I would see it.
Yeah, but do you feel like the serialized item has to be version controlled in source control system?
It depends on the use case. That's your second question, right? So on the one hand, as you see, we are currently developing the starter kits. So therefore, we ship a small example, and with it, we ship the serialized items so that you can directly spin it up, install it, see how it works, and then build your own environment. So that is a use case, but a rare one, I would say. Another one would be if you have really two Content Hub 1 instances, you have to ship your newly created content types along maybe with some basic content. Let's say, I don't know, whatever you maybe require. For example, you can also have content types that are there for configuration purposes, right? Or something that you more need as developers than maybe as an author. You can do that and customize, or you can work on that from Content Hub 1 and use Content Hub 1 as an instance to configure things if you want to. But the major purpose is then if you have two environments and you want to ship it between environments, then you also need to serialize and you need to pull and push your serialized items. That's the only use cases I foresee so far.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Thanks for the additional time you spent, and thanks everyone for joining this very thought-provoking and a lot of information session. As always, Sebastian, thanks again. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you.